All right, guys, this is grade 6, module 5, lesson 7. There's another video on Edpuzzle on finding distance between ordered pairs or coordinate grids. That's what this lesson is about, but I'll break down some of the exercises and the problem set on this if you need it. So let's do it.
All right, so lesson 7 is about distance on a coordinate plane, and I've actually already made a video about this called finding distance on a coordinate plane or distance between ordered pairs. It's on the Edpuzzle account, but I'll go through a couple of these and then go right into the problem set. So you'll notice none of the lines over here are these diagonals because we're not there yet. These are just the straight lines. So let's say from B to C, right, would be this line right here, line BC. And so that's from point B to point C. And all we have to do is count. I mean, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units apart. So in our form here, we can write our distance of 6 units. If I can find a color here that'll write. And our proof is that B is sitting at point, here's our point of origin, 0, 0. So it's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they're both 9 to the right, but C is only 2 up, right? It has a Y of 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So between 8 and 2, the difference between 8 and 2, or the distance between 8 and 2, is 6. So our proof would be that 8 minus 2 is 6. And so that shows us that the x coordinates are the same and the y coordinates are different. So I can put the points for B at 9, 2 for point C. This is actually point C. And 9, 8 for point B. So I may want to switch these around. It really doesn't matter. And you see, since x is the same, right, we're going to have a straight line. When x is the same, it's a vertical line. When y is the same, it's a horizontal line. And so we're really just finding the difference between 8 and 2. All right, so the only other one I'll do is one that crosses 0. When it crosses 0, meaning you have a positive and a negative, then the way you find it is using absolute value. And you really want to use absolute value every time. So you may even want to say, absolute value of 8 minus absolute value of 2 is 6. But since both of those are positive anyway, you don't really need that. And you're subtracting them because you're finding the distance or difference between them. But when you get negative numbers involved, things can sometimes get confusing. So let's look at line CD. You can see this is our 0 line for x, and C is at positive 2y, and D is going to be at negative 5y. So that's going to change things. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, negative 5. So I'm going to write the points for C and D, and then we'll see how to make the proof when we cross a 0 line. Another time you cross 0 would be between A and B. A is at a negative x, and B is at a positive x. A and F, right? A and E, D and E. All these will follow this same rule because they're crossing a 0 line. When they cross the y-axis or the x-axis, they're crossing 0, and you're going to have a negative and a positive. So as you can see on my points, C was at 9, 2, 9 to the right, 2 up, and D was at 9, negative 5, which is 9 to the right and 5 down. So our x is the same, which means we're going to have a vertical line, and we do. So what's the distance between negative 5 and 2? Well, if you do like 2 minus negative 5, you're not going to get the accurate distance. And so what we want to do also, if you do negative 5 minus 2, which way do you go when it's negative or when it's positive? It's kind of confusing. First, let's count, and then let's figure out which way of using these numbers, also thinking about absolute value, will get us the right answer. So let's just go. There's 2 here to get back to 0, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 units of distance between those 2 points. And so to make the proof, what would we do with 2 and with negative 5? That's one to think about, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to use their absolute values, and we're going to add them.
2 plus 5 is 7. So when we cross 0, we're adding absolute values. All right, when we don't cross 0, we're subtracting absolute values. And we always just want to put the bigger absolute value first when we subtract, because in subtraction, that's what you want. You're finding the difference. We want that distance, right? Distance is always positive. And so if I did -2, if I did 2, absolute value of 2, minus 8, that would give me a negative number. So I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to make sure that the absolute value of 8 comes first, and it gives me a positive outcome. But these, notice they're both positive, right? They did not cross 0, so I'm going to subtract. When we cross 0, I have a positive and a negative number. When I do absolute value, I'm going to add them. All right, so those are your proofs for how to find them. Let's look at the next page. So for this page, I'm just going to do these 3. You can fill out the rest. I'm going to do BH or HB, GH or HG, and HC or CH. And I've color-coded them to help you see them down here. BH, you can see it crosses the x-axis, so this is going to cross 0 right there. And so my points were -2, 3, and -2, -4. And so you'll notice x is the same. So I can ignore those. I'm finding the difference between, the distance between +3 and -4. Now we could just count them, right? There's 3, 4, 5, 6. So we know the answer is 7 units. But the proof is going to be a mathematical equation. All right, and so since we're crossing 0, we're going to do the absolute value of 3 and the absolute value of -4. Remember, absolute value makes things positive. It's simply distance. Distance is always a positive thing. And what are we going to do with them? Are we going to subtract or add? Well, 3 minus 4 and 4 minus 3, they don't equal 7. But 3 plus 4 or 4 plus 3 equals 7. So that's our proof, and that's because we're crossing a 0 line that we are going to add, right? We crossed, oops, let me stop. What's going on here? Okay, there we go. Since we're crossing this 0 line, the x-axis, we're going to add our absolute values because we're going to have the distance on top and the distance on bottom to combine to get the total distance. Now look here. You'll notice G and H, they do not cross 0. They don't cross the y-axis, and they don't cross the x-axis. So when I look at those 2 points to figure out what's different, and that's the green one right here, -2, -4 is where H is at, and -9, -4 is where G is at. So these have the same y-coordinate that I can ignore. That means it's a horizontal line, and I'm finding the difference between -9 and -2. So since we're not crossing 0, they're both negatives. I'm going to put their absolute values, but I'm going to do the biggest absolute value first, which is -9. That's going to have an absolute value of 9, right? And I'm going to subtract the absolute value of -2. And that's going to be 9 minus 2, which is 7 units as well. And so now let's count the distance and see, is that 7 units? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It sure is. Our distance is 7 units. And for our last one, again, we're crossing 0. H to C crosses 0. We're at -2, -4, and then we're at 8, -4. And so we have a positive here and a negative here, which means we cross 0. And our y-coordinates are the same, so we have a horizontal line. And so all I'm going to do is do the absolute value of my -2, that x, and I'm going to add it to the absolute value of my 8 because I'm crossing that 0 line, and that's going to give me a distance of 10 units. And then you can go back and count it and check, but I bet you it's going to be 10. So 1, 2, right? 2 to get back to 0, and then I've got 8 more this way. So you can see I'm adding up this chunk and this chunk. So whenever we cross 0, we add absolute value. Doesn't matter what order we put them in because you're adding. But whenever we're not crossing 0, another one would be CD, doesn't cross 0. HE doesn't cross 0. GF doesn't cross 0. We're going to subtract the absolute values and put the bigger absolute value first to make sure we get a positive answer. Distance is always positive, and that's why absolute value comes into play. So go ahead and try out the problem set. I'm just going to throw the answers down here after a few seconds. All right, so here you go. For this page in the problem set, we have horizontal because our y coordinates are the same. They're going to be the same distance up, but they're going to be different left and right. These are neither because none of the points have a match. The y's do not match and the x's do not match. And then this is vertical because our x's are the same, so they're going to be the same distance to the left, but one's going to be 4 up, one's going to be 1 down, which is going to create a vertical line. Here are the distances and their proofs. Remember, we're adding the absolute values when we have one negative and one positive. That means we're crossing 0. If they're both negative or they're both positive, we're subtracting the bigger absolute value minus the smaller absolute value. And remember, absolute value of any number is that number as positive. It's not its opposite, it's that number as positive. The absolute value of 7 is 7. The absolute value of negative 6 is 6. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3. The absolute value of 16 is 16. Okay? Down here, I wrote all the points. You can check those. The distances you can count, or you can use the proofs. Again, adding if we're crossing 0, subtracting if we're not crossing 0, making sure our answer is always positive. Last page, make sure you try it yourself before I show you the answers. All right, so here you go. Check it out, all my points, distances, and proofs. Remember, when we're in different quadrants or we're crossing 0, meaning one of our numbers that are different is negative and one is positive in any order. Our y's are the same. Our x's here, I have a positive and a negative, so therefore I'm going to add absolute values. And when they're the same, in this case, they're both positive. 3 is the same, so they cancel out, but the x's here are positive. So I'm going to subtract the bigger and the smaller one to get a positive outcome. For 5 and 6, name 2 different points. I don't think it's talking about these because there are no 2 different points in different quadrants that form a vertical line. This one is in the same quadrant. None of these match up vertically. So I think it just means right numbers. I wrote 5, 5, and 5, negative 3. So these would be in different quadrants. This would be in quadrant 1. This would be in quadrant 4 because it's right down. And so they would also 5 and negative 3, when you add those absolute values, you get 8 units in length. And because the x's are the same, they'd be the same distance to the right, but they would have a different y value, so it'd be vertical. And here I did 8, negative 1, and 3, negative 1. Both of those are positive negative xy, and so they're in the same quadrant. But since they're the same distance to the right, same distance down, they'll have different distances across on the x's, and so that's going to give you a difference of 5 and in the same quadrant. Well, there you go. I hope it helped. If you have any questions, let me know on Schoology or comment on the video. Have a good day.